Bonjour. I'd like to start thanking the organization, the foundation of the French Medical Academy, for inviting me to this very interesting and innovative event. And I'm going to present you a system we developed for rehabilitation of the upper limbs we call gesture therapy. Okay, so the motivation is basically millions of people, about 15 million each year, suffer strokes and other neurological or musculoskeletal disorders that affect their arms and hand movements. The traditional therapy, physical and occupational therapy, can help, but it's very expensive, requires a therapist present all the time, and also the patients lose motivation. There are some robotic systems that have been developed, but these are too expensive for use at home or in small clinics, in particularly for developing countries. So we need an alternative therapy that is low cost, that does not require a therapist present all the time, and that is motivating to the patient. Virtual rehabilitation is a promising alternative. It has several advantages. It can simulate activities of daily living within a game-like environment. We can manipulate this environment to provide a more intensive learning experience to the patients. It can be used at home without the need of a therapist present. It is much more less expensive than robotic system, and it is motivating and can promote adherence to the therapy. So that's why we developed this system, gesture therapy. We have been working for more than 10 years. We started a collaboration with the University of California, and our main partner has been the National Institute for Neurology and Neurosurgery in Mexico City. So the system has these main components. In the bottom right, we can see a gripper, a specially designed gripper, which helps to follow the motion of the patient's arm, and also it has a pressure sensor, so it can also have the hand exercises. We have a gesture tracking system that, using computer vision, can estimate the position of the patient's hand using a single camera. We have a simulated environment that has a series of games especially designed for rehabilitation. Also, there's a trunk compensation detector because patients tend to move all the body if they have difficulty moving their arm, so we can detect this and take different actions according to the progress of the patient. And finally, there's an adaptation model that can change the difficulty of the games according to the patient progress. So this virtual environment has a series of games that simulate daily activities. It's kind of a Mexican hacienda. Each part of the hacienda has different games, and these are designed to each game for different movements of the arm, the shoulder, and the hand. And also try to be a bit fun so the patient doesn't lose motivation. Regarding our adaptation model, basically it estimates the performance of the patient, measuring the speed and control of the movement of the hand, and based on this can change the difficulty of the game, can increment or decrement the difficulty. So this is important if the patient is going to use it at home without a therapist present. We have incorporated other developments recently, automatic evaluation using a standard clinical scale. We are trying to estimate the patient's emotional state to incorporate it in the adaptation model. and also we have developing another gripper for finger exercises. So the automatical evaluation, basically, we do an automatic evaluation of the Fugel-Meyer scale that basically has 10 exercises that measure different movements of the hand and the arm. We use different sensors, for instance, accelerometers or Kinect, and then this information, these raw signals, we transform to a space, a two-dimensional space, and use principal component analysis. And finally, we apply different classifiers. You can see there the results for different sensors, and the interesting things here, although the results vary according to the classifier, the support vector machine gives the best results, more than 90% accuracy. There is not much variation between the different sensors. So the idea is that the system is relatively independent of using different sensors. So this will allow the system to evaluate the progress of the patient without the need of a therapist. And the other aspect we have been working lately is to try to estimate the affective state of the patient. So we consider 4 states according to the therapist: motivation, if the patient is tired, anxious, or pain. And we try to estimate this based only on the motion of the arm, of the hand, and the hand pressure. So we develop a computational model that can estimate these 4 affective states based only on this information. Here I have some preliminary results with 2 patients using different types of model. The one we develop is this multi-resolution model that obtains more than 90% accuracy for patient 1 and around nearly 75% for patient 2. We had done several clinical trials to test our system. The first 2 trials were done with stroke patients, in total around 50 patients, and we compare with the traditional occupational therapy. This was about a month with 3 sessions per week. The third trial is with children with cerebral palsy, and we have an ongoing trial that is more extensive with about 100 patients with stroke and 100 patients with cerebral palsy. We used 2 clinical scales before and after each trial, the Fugel-Meyer I mentioned before, and the motricity index, and also a motivation scale. And in summary, the main conclusions from these studies is that in the case of stroke, the clinical impact of gesture therapy is at least as good as conventional occupational therapy, but patients show a stronger motivation and attachment to the treatment. In the case of children with cerebral palsy, the results indicate a significant impact on motor improvement, actually in this case, statistically better than the conventional therapy. Once we find that that was a promising approach and also is quite inexpensive, we started to develop a product from this prototype. So we went into the intellectual property, documentation, and formal testing, improve the user interface, includes a patient database and administration facilities, and also to register with the sanitary authorities. In the case of Mexico, it's COFEPRIS. We currently have 2 patents, one for the molecular 3D vision system for rehabilitation, and one for the gun gripper. These have been both approved in Mexico. The patent for the gripper was approved in Europe recently. We have applications pending in the US and Canada. Just to summarize some of the main challenges during this development, one, of course, for us that we are engineers is a clinical evaluation. So we have been lucky to have one of the best doctors in rehabilitation, Dr. Jorge Hernandez in Mexico, that has collaborated with us since the beginning of the project. We have also been have a research funding from different agencies. This has helped a lot in the development of the project. We have also had some support from our institution for the technology transfer and the patent applications. And the main challenge remains how to go from the prototype to a commercial product and get it to market, as in Mexico it's difficult to get funding at the early stages of startup companies. Regarding the possibilities, I think that for developing countries, this could provide an alternative for patients that live in areas that are limited access to therapists or have to travel long distances. For instance, one of the patients in our study traveled like 10 hours to go to a clinic to have its therapy. And for developed countries, it can be a complement to other therapists. It can be used at home, and also it can help to reduce costs and improve adherence to the therapy. In the future, we are planning clinical trials at home, and also with stroke patients at early stages, at the acute stage. Previous studies were done with chronic patients. We are also developing a finger gripper to incorporate this in the last stages of rehabilitation for the motion of the fingers, and also to incorporate this affective state intimation in the system for the adaptation to the patient. And we funded a startup company to complete the development and the commercialization of the system. I'd like to acknowledge all my collaborators, in particular the co-investigators and students at INAOE, several institutions we have collaborated in this project, and also the institutions that has given us financial support. And finally, here you can have some...
Bien derechito, Julio?
This is a video.
Julio, el tronco no. Aquí yo te voy a detener con mi pie. Acuérdate que solo es el brazo. Eso.
Yes, I think that we don't need the sound. So it's one of the children with cerebral palsy that is using the system. And for additional information, we have a blog, the webpage of the company, and also there is my email in case you want to get in touch with me. Thank you very much.